All right, guys, I'm back over here at Premium Coach Group, and I'm doing a video I don't really want to do. So if I seem irritated and I seem rushed, it's because I'm doing a slide repair on an HWH slide out. This is a chain-driven slide out, but it also has a synchronization rack and pinion on it too, because why not? I have a video where I replace a very similar chain, but on this one, the whole mechanism's all jammed up because of that rack and pinion. And I don't want to do this. And of course, Murphy's Law being what it is, it's going to be this mechanism right over here. The one against the wall that I don't have a lot of working space with. We'll go to the other side and try to make sense of what we got here. So you can see that chain-driven slide. It pushes and pulls it, except unlike the other one, this is pushed and pulled at the top and bottom. Now, if we look past the cylinder itself, looks like a sawtooth right there. There's one there, and then there's another one on the backside here, and then there's it's kind of hard to see right there. There's like a gear in between that, so it keeps the bottom chain in sync with the top chain. And of course, on this one, on the back one, that got all not worky. So I have to rebuild this thing. All right, let me kind of show you what's going on. Besides, obviously, that thing extending out that it shouldn't be, because the fascia is supposed to be right there. So the whole thing's all bound up. You can kind of see how janky it is right there. If I go to run it out, driver's side slide out. So the front one retracts just fine, but that back one is not working well at all. It's jamming up pretty bad. So let me go ahead and retract it. I have to disconnect the cylinders. Geez, I don't know. And I guess what we should do first, or any good technician would do, is check parts. So let me open this up and make sure I have the right parts. The pinion kit, RX 93184, and the rack kit, RX 93253. All right, so if I seem irritated, it's because I've actually never done this exact job before. And I don't know why they have to make everything so complicated. So here's going to be those racks I was talking about. Looks like there's two sets of them. Here's going to be the pinion or the gear, and it's just made up of a whole bunch of rods that pivot around there, that center. A whole bunch of guides and surfaces. So I think we have the right parts. Back and turn this thing down. So to disconnect that, the cylinder, I just have to undo this nut right here and then retract the cylinder all the way back up in. Chances are pretty good I'm going to make a mess. I need to make sure I get a lot of towels down here to contain any mess. All right, so luckily they made that 15/16, and the hoses are in the way. So likely you have to cut these zip ties. And I do happen to have a stubby 15/16, so that'll work out pretty well, considering I ain't got no room on the other side for a long wrench. There's a lot of clearance there. Alright, well again, this is how you would adjust the slide out. Is that a little bit of adjustment on the cylinder rod there. So now hopefully I'll just have to do driver's side out, which will retract the cylinder. There it goes. And there it goes. Out. Of course, we're going out even though we're retracting the cylinder, because in order for this slide out to extend, it retracts the cylinder. Because again, packaging and difficulty. All right, so those are retracted. I think the next step is to disconnect the hoses. So I don't have to disconnect this hose. These hoses I do, because I have to go release the pressure on the pump. I have to go down to the pump and undo all the valves. Now Monaco conveniently located this hydraulic pump for HFH systems underneath the front step here, so you have to move this out of the way. It's weird. How long has that been there? So here are the valves. We have 4, because we have 4 hydraulic slides. Now there's only 3 hydraulic room slides, and then there's a generator slide. So you have an extend and retract for each one. And because I don't know which one is which, even HWH will tell you just have to loosen up all of them. That way you don't spend your entire day making sure you're on the right one, just find out you weren't. Just a 1/4 inch nut right there. You're just gonna back it off till you hear the fluid release. Right. Well, that was the driver's side front slide. The pressure's releasing. That's awesome. So now these are not captured nuts, so if you do unscrew them too far, you'll shoot the needle out the back, and you'll need to replace the valve too. I can't tell you if these are extend or retract. I'm not even going to worry about it. It is labeled, but remember, just because it might be an extend solenoid doesn't mean the slide's extending. It might be retracting, and vice versa. So let me just open up the other 4 on this side, and then we'll go back into the room. With that done, now we can go back in the room. Hopefully, we can disconnect the hoses. What I'm going to do is lay down a lot of rags and some plastic, because it will leak. I need to grab some plugs to put on the hoses because they will keep weeping. Right? So I just got a garbage bag right here. I kind of use that to be a drip pan. A bunch of rags on top so that the rags will actually capture everything. But if it mixes it through, the plastic will keep it from soaking into the carpet. I have my plug set up. So if you ever do a cylinder, save all these things. These have saved my life so many times. Should be, I think on these it's 9/16, but on the jacks it's 5/8. So that's what I said, it's 5/8. Okay. So let me get my back wrench on there. Which I think is 7/16. Yeah, just like I said. Okay, let's see if I can do this. So there'll still be some pressure on it. So I think what we're gonna end up trying to do is take this entire arm out and take it down outside to the bench and rebuild it outside. I don't even know what's really wrong with it. I only know that it's jammed up. Of course, do take care not to cut the hoses, right? I'm just going to go ahead and disconnect this line and then disconnect that line. Of course, as we take that off, like I said, it probably will leak. This is hydraulics, and hydraulics, all they do is leak anyways. I'll put my plug back on there. I'll keep debris from getting in it, and then I'll keep... And I'll also keep it from leaking all over the carpet inside. So that's pretty good. Should be good there on that one. Just got one more to go. All right, so that other one removed. Now we're just down to taking the whole mechanism out. So we'll start down here, disconnecting all the hardware, securing the arm down here and down there. That's 3/8, 3/8, 3/8. I think that's 7/16. And then do the same thing on the back one, and hopefully this will be the last thing to take off. You know, as I was taking that one out from down there, I noticed that you guys didn't tell me there's 2 missing bolts or screws right there, and I'm gonna guess This is important. Hey, there's one of those rods for the sink, for that sprocket. Could that be part of the problem? Seems likely. What a great design. I mean, HWH, the builder of this slide-out mechanism, really is a good company out of Moscow, Iowa. And ultimately, they're only building something that manufacturers are asking them to build. So it's not really their fault. They made something complicated. I mean, it's kind of their fault. Right, so right for now, rather than taking this plate off the slide box itself, I'm just going to take this plate itself off of that mounting plate. Got to bring out the bigger dog. These are on there a little too strong. Alright, so that part's loose. Alright, I'm going to have to put you guys down because this is going to be heavy. It's a big thing of steel. Alright, so yeah, this is actually really quite heavy. If you guys can see that. So that's a chain, and that's a chain, but they're as rigid as a piece of steel, even though, of course, I can push on it right now. And so the rack is supposed to keep it in sync. If you can see that pin sticking up. Yeah, so... Oh, that's probably what happened. Oh, I see what happened. Can you guys see what happened? I can see what happened. So right here is that spur gear, or the gear, or the hub that actually those two guys are going to pivot around inside the arm here. This is plastic, that's not steel. So I guess they made that the weak point. And so when it bound up, it just completely wallowed out those pins. That's what's going on. Okay. So the idea is this cylinder right here, as it retracts, it pulls this rack, which of course would push, would go that way against that gear, and would pull this chain at the same time, which would extend the slide, and then it would also retract this one. Oh, yeah, retract that chain with it, or pull that chain, which would retract the top. So that's how they're synchronizing the two chains with one cylinder. So next step is get this cylinder out of the way for sure. 9/16, what do you think? Nailed it first time. Alright, yeah, that's what I was hoping. So just get the bolts out right there, and it just pulls out of the socket right there. Alright, with the cylinder out of the way, I think we can kind of see what the big issue was. I'm guessing somewhere around right here. So I think that's pretty impressive. This is where the this was supposed to be, is right there, but it completely broke off and broke through there. And pulled through. So I don't know how many times this happened. Because I do know I did try this slide out and it didn't do this before. So I bet I can just take those pins out, the whole thing will slide out that way. You can see these teeth are all buggered, so we're going to have to replace those. I'll try to put all the part numbers at the end of all this. Alright, it's kind of clever that they're using pins as a gear. I'll give them that. Alright, so these are Torx bits. I'm going to assume it's the only one that, the one I'm missing is the one I need. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. I'll be right back. T15. A little broken. Can we see what the problem is right there? Anyone? Anyone? You know, I might as well take the opportunity to inspect the chain and make sure it's not damaged. These little roller wheels like to break. They're just plastic, like a black plastic nylon. And those would help make the chain turn and go around this cavity right in there. So if you miss one, you're okay. If you miss two, it's binding up. If you miss three, the chain's not going to work very well. 9/16. We're going to go ahead and take the chains off of those brackets right there. All right, so just slide out. We have a new guide. We match this up. Well, that looks like it. This one's all buggered up. The good news is they did give you new Tex T15 screws. So that one goes right there. It just fits in. Probably just knock it out from behind. I mean, I guess we might as well change it. It's a thinner one. So there's a new one. And this is all we're doing. See the nut? Here we go. Easy. Do the next one the same way. Just a little, should be easier the second time, right? Yeah, but just make sure you're matching these things up so they you have the same ones, same lengths that came out. All right, now with that one in there. Yeah, that's the old one. And then tighten up that one. Then we need to put the here's I can tell those guide strips back in. These guys. Yep. There you go. All right. Now I got that in there, and the holes line up. So I just have to put the screws back in. Alright, so it's a good thing we replaced this because that one's broken. That one got chipped. These look fine. Again, my unofficial guess would be the next point is to install this roller. This is kind of like the center. It's just going to go right there. Be a pin that drops all the way down in there, and we'll start putting the pins in. But before we put the pins in, I need to probably make sure that I'm square as far as I don't want this side out too far and that side in too far. Otherwise, it's going to keep it sink crooked. All right, so I just took this piece of plywood, made it 18.5. I'm going to rip it down the middle. That way, it'll be the exact same size. I'll just use those as wedges to hold that up. Should be one of my blocks. And the other one here. All right, so now those should be parallel to each other now. That's what we want to do, is make sure that it's parallel, right? Seems like a plan to me. It might be hard to see. So now we're aligned there. Just drop the pin in. There's a hole for it to go into in the steel here. So then that should be, we'll make sure that it sits down and is captured. Okay, so I think that's where we want that. We just have all these pins. These pins just go in. And I think I see what they're doing. These become the gears, of course. All right. So that's in. Then we have this one washer right here that's going to go on top. That'll keep those pins from backing out like they did. So I guess that slide must have bound up. So I don't know why the whole thing broke to begin with. I don't know, maybe somebody was extending the slide and it hit something and it bound up, or I was retracting the slide and it hit something and bound up. And that hub right there was the natural weak point for it to break at. I don't know. Maybe they do this so that the hoses don't rupture. I don't know. So I'm really concerned why this did this to begin with. And this is the second time I've seen this, so I'm concerned about all of this. So the idea is that these would be as far down, they're captured by the backside of the steel there. So the only way they come out at this point would be to come up. So this washer is going to keep them from being able to come out of that hub. And then I don't know if you can see right here on the backside of that cylinder, that washer and that pin is going to mount right there. That'll keep downward pressure against this whole assembly right there. So let me go ahead and put it all back together. Alright, so with this back in here and that put back together, hopefully you guys can kind of see. If I push down, you see both of those moving past each other. So we're keeping in sync the whole time. I couldn't do that once the cylinder's hooked up though. So now I just have to put it back in place. But before I put it back in place, I need to get this thing mounted up a little bit better than it is, because that ain't no good. Alright, so I got a couple more screws in there now, because that hole's going to be stripped out and that one is too. I'm going to try to drill another hole through the plate. Alright, that should be secured now. Let's put this thing in. Perfect. Alright, the first screw in, now I can do everything else pretty easily. Alright, so naturally, I forgot to do something. Oh, so those bolts, those screws are back in there in place. And I don't know if you guys remember, way back ago, I had 2 broken screws. I still have 2 broken screws, so I didn't drill out new holes. So now I have to drill out new holes with it mounted, because I didn't think this one through. Alright, I had an extra one just in case. So now we have 3 on that side. I just have to hook these back up and then connect the lines back up. So let's do that. Figure why we have this right here, guys. I don't know if you guys see this weird looking nut on some of your HWH slide outs. When you bought it, you had a really long Acme screw in your basement, so you can manually retract your slide outs. That's where that rod's gonna go, and that's just gonna go in there. Once you open up everything, you see that little divot right there for the other end to go onto, to pivot around. You're going to be using that to manually push this thing open, or closed. Alright, so those are back together. And just so you guys know, that's the model number AP40226. Now I gotta go back to the step, close off all the cylinder valves, or the have to go shut off all the, close all the valves, and bleed the air out of the system. Alright, that was the last one. Run all the other ones out so they equalize. Driver slide out. That one creep back in on us. If you hear that little whistle at the end, or that screaming, or that squelching, that should be the relief valve in the pump opening up. That means we've reached maximum pressure. That's kind of what we're listen for. Let me try this again. Driver's side out. So it is retracting now. I'll check the other one. That one's retracting too. All right, now I just have to go driver's side out. All right, so with that whistle now, we've made sure that all the pressure is equalized. Because I know you guys can't see it, but HWH does something weird. I'm not a hydraulic engineer, but if you have two cylinders, something about surface, see, force equals pressure times surface, something like that. There's going to be different forces acting on the hydraulic. You have the two cylinders, so it's hard to keep those completely in line with each other if one side had a little bit more resistance on it. And so they have what's called a sink cylinder. A sink cylinder is like a cylinder with two rods in it, kind of like, or two caps in it. And that's a better example. And that's usually just in the basement somewhere. It's like a cylinder not hooked up to anything. You're like, what the heck is the cylinder doing? That's what it's doing. It's in line with those two cylinders. And so it has like two poppet valves within it. And it kind of keeps the one side in sync with the other one. Hence, it's a sink cylinder. I'm not a hydraulic engineer. I didn't design it, but that's how they keep those two cylinders in sync using one set of hoses. I'm sure that didn't help. All right, so next step is I just have to extend out the cylinder again, so N would retract. All right. Oh, ooh, that was close. That goes right there. How we do on the other one? Put my little lock washer up there, and let's extend it. Out. In. Okay. Whew. It feels like it's putting a lot of pressure on stuff. All right, so now I get to put the nuts back on underneath. If there's any good news, I don't know if you guys remember before, I couldn't get the nut off the other side because there's almost no room. I kind of feel like it might be extending the rod too far. And I might have to back off this a little bit. Okay, let me check outside. All right, we're not going to hit anything. That's good news. And if I go out with it, ooh, the whole thing's moving now. Ooh, the whole thing's moving still. Let me go outside. Tape measure. Well, that side looks pretty straight. That side looks pretty straight. Let's see, I'm at 4.5-ish. And 4.5-ish. I guess I keep running it out. Out. I might need to make a note of all the rags that I left in the way. Keep going out. Alright, well. Definitely don't like the hoses getting crushed. Have to figure out what's going on there. Let me go back out with, or in with it. Huh. This is how the factory had it. It's been getting crushed for a long time. Nice. Great. One more thing I have to do. Pick up this floor and get some slack on that. Great. Okay. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, with that floor removed, now we can look underneath and go, gross. Somebody had a dog. So that blue harness right there, that's the hoses. So I'll just cut those zip ties. Right there. I think I have enough slack right here. Okay, well, I think I got everything tied back up again underneath. So let me just run it out and in. I might have to adjust it. It might be trying to retract too much. So let me go out. I think I'm going to be cutting off some of that. I did end up having to cut this a little bit to clear everything. It kept snagging on the zip ties no matter what I did. So let me run it out one more time. I'm not telling you everything I did. I did have to adjust this. I backed those jam nuts up a little bit. It's pretty easy to do. All you have to do is loosen the bottom one. Take the pressure off of it by retracting the cylinder. That'll give the slack, and you can move this nut. And then you extend it till it's all the way down, then you tighten up the bottom nut. That way it's not trying to over retract. So we'll try this one more time, slide out. You can see that rack moving past itself. Pulling the chains. Alright, now I just have to put zip ties back up on there again. I guess I forgot to show you guys that it now clear, so it's not getting hit. So my zip ties got pulled off still. That's what all that cracking was. Oh yeah, before I forget, this whole curtain back here, they just keep fingers from getting crushed by this chain. All it is spring loaded, so this gets screwed down. That's all it's doing. Yeah, so with those screws back in, now you just go ahead and run it back out. That's all it's doing. Sometimes those strings break. Don't worry about it. Well, there it was, guys. Rebuilding the rack and pinion on these HWH Space Saver dual chain driven slides. This was a 2008 Dynasty. I just have to put the fascia back on and the floor back on. That's pretty straightforward. We'll test it out one more time after it's done, but there's no real reason to watch that. I really hope that helps somebody out there, because like I said, this is not a job I wanted to do. but this slide didn't work. It just bound up. It was going to rip everything apart if we would have kept trying to do it. So food for thought when you come to buying a coach with hydraulic slides or electric slides. Now, by this point, if you guys watch my channel, you know that I find all slides to be horrible and a bad experience for me. Hydraulic slides usually give a lot more space saving, and you can put some heavy slides on it, but they're not easy to service or operate manually. Electric slides, pretty easy to service and operate manually, unless it's one of those great big huge full wall slide outs with more than one motor. Let's see if there's 3 motors or 4 motors. Yeah, it's not fun. And of course, if it's a Schwintek, yeah, we know how I feel about that. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Now, some of you might be surprised to know I do actually put down coverings. I do try to keep people's houses clean. It's just a fine line between getting work done and spending all day not getting work done. And I do clean up after I'm myself. It makes no sense to clean up while I'm working. Thanks. Towels down here to contain any mess. Hold on. Luckily, I guess, you know, it's on the backside where nobody's going to see. I could have tried taking this C-clip off and this captured that little roller. Just slide it off, but I had one run into this slide mechanism before, and it was on a Tiffin Zephyr, and the whole damn thing broke, but it was on a flush floor, so we go out and then down, because complications, right? And I think we spent about the better part of 4 or 5 hours with the forklift just trying to get this slide put back into place, because it was binding up on the backside of a galley, and it was a lift floor, so it was way too complicated. Ultimately, we got it in, but it took a lot of doing and a lot of finessing. And yeah. So my experience is, basically what I'm saying is that there's usually a lot of tension on that chain, and it doesn't move as freely as you think it might.